so let's keep going again. So now we have something called quartiles and interquartile range. All right, quartiles are very special kinds of percentages. So if I say that you're like in the top 10% of your class, that means like 90% of the other people are behind you, like in GPA and standing. Well, those are percentiles. I can find like the 65th percentile of grades, or if you're the 85th percentile in your group for weight or height, those kind of things. Percentiles, we look at data and we put it in 100 even spots. Well, quartiles are kind of different. If you look at it, it's probably going to remind you of the word quarters. And that's really important because quartiles, we're looking at 25% of the data in parts. And think about it, quarters are, you have 4 quarters in a dollar, so you can have 25, 25, 25, and 25. So the first quartile is the same as the 25th percentile. The third quartile is the same as the 75th percentile. And between those two is the median. So the median, remember again, we just talked about that. That's the middle of the data. And that represents that number right there. I can have 50% of the data below it and 50% of the data above it. So usually when you're thinking of quartiles, you have Q1, median, and Q3. And that represents from Q1 to Q3, that represents 50% of your middle data. And that can be really important because if I'm looking at the extremes of the data, I might not want to report that, but maybe what I want to report is 50% of the data in the middle to show what it looks like for that section. Okay, so to calculate the quartiles, you got to order your data from smallest to largest, and then you divide it by there. But don't worry about that because guess what? Minitab does it for you. And we have something called the interquartile range, and that just talks about the range of that 50% of the data. And basically what it is, it's the range from Q1 to Q3. Okay, outliers can skew this part of it because outliers can skew the data. Either you can have low outliers or you can have high outliers, and it can pull that data set. When we're trying to find outliers, we do that by looking at the interquartile range, and then we subtract it. I'm sorry, what we do is we look at the interquartile range. So if we want to find outliers that are towards the bottom of the data set, we do Q1, which is quartile 1, minus 1.5 times the interquartile range. That 1.5 is a constant that was developed to do that. And for upper quartiles, we do Q3, which is third quartile, plus 1.5 times the IQR. Guess what? We don't even have to use this formula because we can look at something called box plots in Minitab, and it shows us if we have outliers. Isn't that awesome? We don't even have to worry about doing this formula. But I wanted you to know where it came from when we look at that. So again, we have something where we have the first quartile, the median, and the third quartile, but maybe we want to look at a bigger picture of that data. So a snapshot of the data is the 5-number summary. The first number of this is the minimum. Then you have your first quartile. Then you have your median. Then you have your third quartile, and then you have your maximum. The excellent thing about Minitab is when you do descriptive statistics, it gives all 5 of these right after each other. So it's so easy to look at. So again, this 5-number summary is just a quick snapshot of my data so I can look at it. And one thing we can do with this 5-number summary is make a box plot or a box and whiskers plot. I don't know if you might remember these from a long time ago. And again, your box and whisker plot is your minimum, first quartile, median, third quartile, and your maximum. So this is what a box and whiskers plot looks like. Okay, here's a data set. It's 1, 1, 2, 2, 4, 6, 6.8, 7.2, 8, 8.3, 9, 10, 10, 11.5. Okay, so I put it in Minitab and I find out my first quartile is 2. My median is 7. The third quartile is 9. The smallest value is 1 right here, and the largest value is 11.5. All right, so here is my box plot. So let's go from left to right. Minimum value right here is 1. 2 is my first quartile, and it's right here. Here's my median of 7. Here's my third quartile of 9. And here's my upper value of 11.5. So the reason we call this a box and whiskers plot, this box right here that we create, this is the middle 50% of the data. So it goes from Q1 to Q3, and we make this dashed line in the middle to let us know it's the median. And then we put the minimum and the maximum on the other sides, and we connect it with that little line.